mean, you even more so because you actually go out in the wilderness and whatnot, go hunting and whatnot. I mean, it's a humbling experience, I assume.
It's very humbling. It's very psychedelic. People think that sounds crazy, like going out to kill an animal psychedelic. But what's psychedelic about it is it's boundary dissolving in that you enter into a truly wild world. And there is these large animals that live in this wild world. And you feel their world. There's no cell phone service out there. You're in the woods with the trees and the animals. And you're a part of this natural environment for a very brief time. And, people are like, well, why would you want to go there and kill those animals? And there's all these weird arguments that you could have back and forth about this, these conversations that you could have about whether or not it's okay to kill these animals. I've made these conversations with myself, believe me. Like before I started hunting for the first time, my thought was I'm either going to go hunting and I'm going to never eat meat again, I'm going to become a vegan, or I'm going to be a hunter. And I decided to be a hunter. And one of the reasons why I decided to be a hunter is I realized I don't like factory farming. I think it's fucked up. I think the way we get our food, I think we've made a huge mistake. It's a great decision, but a huge mistake at the same time in that we've decided to live in these gigantic urban areas. In these urban areas, that becomes our natural world. And in that natural world, we don't see tigers. We don't see wolves. We don't see bears. We don't see these animals. So our association with these animals is very unnatural. Our world consists of streets and cars and buildings and elevators, and that's our natural world. That's the natural world that we live in. When you go out into the woods and you see the actual natural world, the tooth, fang, and claw natural world, and you find mountain lion shit that has hair in it, and you look around and you see an elk at the top of a ridge, and he's trying to fuck all these other cow elk and trying to fight all these bulls that are coming in. And I mean, last time I was elk hunting, they had found a dead elk that had been killed by another elk. This 1,000-pound animal that died because this other animal with fucking a tree grown out of its head speared it in the side and killed it. I mean, it's really wild to see. Like, these things kill each other so they can fuck. And you're out in that world, and when you do, it makes everything seem the whole predator-prey experience seems very intensified. Like your connection to your food is very intense. The whole thing is like, and also from a wildlife management standpoint, you have what we're talking about with Lyme disease. The reason why they have Lyme disease is because they have too many deer. They have too many deer. They have these ticks. These ticks get on these deer. They develop this disease, and these ticks get onto people. And it's because of an overabundance of deer, the overpopulation. They could nip that shit in the bud if they could figure out how to dwindle down the population of deer. When you have too many animals, too many game animals, too many wild animals, and the balance gets overrun, whether it's too many wolves or too many bear or too many deer, like wildlife biologists understand what the correct numbers are in order to keep that harmony. And you have two options. Option number one, hunters. They pay money, they go out there, and the money from those tags is responsible for the protection of these wildlife areas, protection of habitat, or option number two, they hire snipers. They hire people to go out there and kill these animals. And that's what they're doing in Zimbabwe with lions. They're killing 200 lions rather this year because they have so many lions now because of the what happened with the dentist, where the dentist went over and shot Cecil the lion. It became this big thing. Well, they had a control of their population. They had this sort of ecosystem balanced out.
And the hunters got scared.
The hunters got scared. Right. They moved off. They don't go there anymore. And so now they have all these lions that are destroying this ungulate population. So they made a wildlife biologist decision to go in there and kill 200 lions to lessen the impact on the ungulates.
Yeah.
It's all and in North America they do that with bears, they do that with mountain lions in most states. They figure out what is the healthy number where all these animals can coexist.
Yeah, well it's one thing to have an opinion on that matter, and it's a different thing to actually have exposure and then maintain that opinion. You know what I mean? Like it's one thing to be on Twitter, sitting on your couch, watching TV, saying a couple words about how you think about the planet, the wilderness, and so on. But to maintain that perspective when you're actually in it, I would have to believe and speculate that that's a difficult thing to do.
Well, there's a deep respect that comes, and a deep love for an animal that is going to sustain you and feed you. And the thing about it is these animals, they're not going to live forever if you don't do that. Their life is incredibly brutal and incredibly short. And what you're doing as a hunter is you're going into that world and you're dipping your toes into it for a brief amount of time, a week or whatever it takes to find an animal. And then that animal's going to feed you for months. And to me, it's so much more ethical than buying it from a store. I mean, that even can't even be argued.
Yeah.
But from a vegan perspective, like they don't want anything to die, they want everything to live forever. But it doesn't work that way. Because first of all, if you don't shoot animals, if you don't control bear populations, the bear are going to decimate the moose population. They're going to decimate the deer population. They eat all the calves. They eat all the fawns. That's just what they do. That's what they've always done. Not only that, they go and they eat each other. Bears are all cannibals. I mean, there's a massive amount of cannibalism in the bear world. They eat cubs. It's one of the first things that males do when they come out of hibernation. And if you don't control their populations, they will do that to every fucking thing that's out in the woods. And the only thing that can control their population is another predator. And the only predator for bears is people. Mm-hmm. That's it. And and the people will go, like, what about people? People are overpopulated, man. Why don't you fucking shoot people? Why don't you kill yourself? Mm-hmm. How about I start with you
Sounds
fuck?
About right, yeah.
You non-human loving fuck. Yeah, I mean, like, life eats life. And that is a weird reality.
I think there's a part of it, though, the complicated part of it is that obviously everybody can't do that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, that is true, but that doesn't mean that everybody can't survive 100%. On the 100%. Amount of money that you make every year. It doesn't mean you should give up that money because everybody can't make the amount of money that you make.
Yeah. Why are you singling me out here?
Well, I'm just saying, for anybody. I mean, look, if you make more than $35,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of the world. We live in a very strange time.
No, I just mean, like, I think some people, people's perspectives are formed by, in some ways, their capabilities.
Right.
And if all they ever knew was going to McDonald's or whatever, and it's a hard thing to break.
It is a hard thing to break, and it's a hard thing to recognize that it can't, well, people say it's not sustainable for the entire population. Well, I'm not the entire population. Mm-hmm. Not only that, what we're doing is not sustainable for the entire population of the world.
Personally, I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic about it. I don't know if it's sustainable or not sustainable.
Hunting is not. There's not enough animals. There's just not.
You got to farm them.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to eat the way people eat today, mm-hmm. there has to be some sort of farming going on if you want to eat the amount of meat. And people find that problematic, and that's for a good reason. They're
is there
right.
a way to do the farming part better?
Maybe. Yeah. There certainly is. But there's also problems with just eating vegetables. Just eating vegetables, first of all, displaces massive amounts of wildlife. Second of all, when you buy grain, you are responsible indirectly for the death of thousands of animals. There's just no way around it. Those combines are indiscriminate, and they grind up deer fawns and rabbits and rats and mice and groundhogs and everything else. Then on top of that, pesticides.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're buying absolute organic where there's no pesticides used, you're for sure going to be responsible for the death of millions of bugs.
If you live in a house, you display, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's fucking with animals.
And on top of that, there's some very real and compelling evidence that plants have a level of intelligence. We don't want to think of them as sentient because they can't communicate with us. They don't say anything to us like, ow, don't chop me down, it hurts. But they communicate with each other. There's something that plants do. Now, this is a crazy thing that they found with giraffes, that the plants that giraffes eat, if they're downwind, so like if the giraffes are eating this plant and the wind from the plant they're eating goes downwind and catches these other plants, the plants will change the chemical composition of their leaves and become more bitter, making them less attractive to predation. So they're communicating with each other.
Some
like,
telepathic
fuck, we're
shit
getting
right
eaten.
there.
I don't remember what plant it was that does that. But they have proven that plants do calculations, that plants are doing some kind of strange mathematics, that they're communicating with each other. They know when other plants are being chopped down. There's some shit going on with life.
Yeah.
And we don't have the capability to understand dolphins, okay? We don't know what they're saying. When dolphins communicate with each other, they have a complex language. They have dialects. They sound differently in different parts of the world. They recognize each other. They have a very bizarre way of communicating that we have not been able to decipher. But we recognize that it's going on because it's close enough to our own kind of communication that we say, oh, these things are smart and they're talking to each other. Well, there's something going on with plants too. And this is a recent thing where the science behind it is starting to catch up, where it's emerging, where they're doing these tests and they're running these numbers and they go, look, they're not wooden. In the sense that it's not like you're not talking about a rock. Like a plant, a living plant has some sort of awareness. There's something going on. And different ones have more awareness, and there's some sort of communication through the actual ecology of the ground. I mean, the ground itself is a living thing. Dirt itself is some sort of an organism.
Right.
I mean, it is like a person is. Like a person is an ecosystem. We're responsible for the lives of untold trillions of bacteria that live inside of us, right? Well, the same thing can be said of the dirt itself. The dirt itself is some sort of a strange, balanced ecosystem where worms and bacteria and all of these different funguses and all these different life forms all exist together. And then the plant feeds off of those life forms. And the plant, in some respects, relies on the death of biological things like mammals and rats and bugs. It relies on them for the very nutrients that it needs to make a plant in the first place. It's all very, very complex and deep. It's all connected. And to deny that you're eating life, some strange life form, when you're having a salad is the height of convenience. There's nothing wrong with eating a salad. But I don't think there's anything wrong with eating an elk steak either. Right. Life is consuming life. And it's just more obvious when you shoot an animal and you're there when it dies.
What about